All right, welcome everyone to Board of Ethics meeting. This is a regularly scheduled meeting for January 11th. Are you giving them the next sign? Oh. At 11:30 on January 11th. And can we have roll call, please?
Ted Carlson.
Here.
Terry Kelly is excused. Jack McKenna.
Here.
David Nesbitt.
Here.
Marsha Olson.
Here.
Also present is Dee Ennis, Deputy Municipal Attorney, Lisa Toussaint, Administrative Hearing Officer, and Lisa Slusner, Deputy Municipal Clerk. You have a quorum.
And instead of rearranging the agenda, do we just simply do the introductions after the meeting minutes? Or should we move to amend the agenda now?
Do that.
Okay, so our rules, Robert's rules, are a little more relaxed here, so a lot of times I can make a motion. I can even second things sometimes. We kind of relax those rules a little bit. So what I'm doing now is I'm just going to move to amend the agenda to include introductions prior to what? Prior to the minutes or prior to consent?
Before consent.
Before consent. So before 5, we're going to do simple introduction for the new members. That's right, because we're voting on the old minutes. Is that right?
Right.
Okay. Do we? So before we do that, though, Mr. Carlson, have you had a chance to review the minutes from the previous meeting?
Yeah.
You have. Oh, I should finish my motion.
Okay.
Okay. Can I have a second to amend the agenda?
Second.
Okay. Any objection? Hearing no objection, that passes. So we'll amend the agenda to include introductions after the meetings, but before the consent. So, Mr. Carlson, have you had a chance to review the minutes from the previous meeting? Okay. Any objection to approving the minutes from the previous meetings? Hearing no objections, that will be approved. So now let's go to introductions. We have 2 new members as part of our board. You want to introduce yourselves just so we can have it on the record?
Yeah, my name's Marsha Olson. I teach at the university, communication.
Mm-hmm. So were you invited by Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Oh, all right. There we go.
He's got a little quorum over
Yeah,
there.
I have to warn you ahead of time. I know you don't like to digress, but he likes to blame other people at the university for his failure to get things in on time.
Oh,
So
I
just
see.
keep, Steve, remember
Steve
Steve? It was always
Strong.
Steve's fault. Do you know Steve Strong? Did you know him?
No.
Oh, he must have been, he
Didn't
left.
actually exist, did he?
He
No,
probably
no, he didn't.
We're in different departments.
Okay.
Although his office is right down the hall from mine.
Anyway,
he harasses
so-
me regularly.
I'm sure he does. Well, he'll continue that
Okay,
while you're here,
great.
so be prepared. Mr. McKenna.
I'm Jack McKenna. I'm an attorney. I work at Birchwort and Bittner and Shiro and do kind of general civil litigation. I do a fair amount of municipal law at the moment, so this is nice. And previously, I was at the DA's office for a little over 6 years. And I know David as well as Terry.
Perfect. Good. Do you know everyone else here? Do you know Lisa?
Introduced.
Okay, so she is our, she's a administrative law judge who is a enormous help for this group because a lot of times we'll give her projects to work on. And Mr. Carlson, what's your background?
No, that was my dad. My name's Ed. I'm retired police captain, and then also retired from the assembly, County Assembly. And now I'm just completely retired except for boards and commissions.
Ted serves on lots of volunteer boards
Yeah.
and commissions, and so he is very active in our community for that.
I'm not a
Besides-
couch potato.
Yes.
And I'm Dee Ennis. I'm the Deputy Municipal Attorney, although my function here is support to the board. But another role that will come up today in this meeting is I'm also the Municipal Ethics Officer, which is a mayor deal under a P&P. And so I interact with the board on other levels as well. And I think the theory is that government doesn't operate once a month, so you need someone else to fill in. And so I do lots of little simple things. I have Lisa as backup, because again, we're both attorneys, we're not theoretically members of the board. This board is gracious and lets us interject our opinions freely. A former staff person did not let us interject our opinions freely. But you will see today that the person who's done a request for advisory opinion, he called my office and I gave him a quick summary of what I thought. He didn't agree with it, number one, but also it needed further explanation, so then I refer that to the board. And so you'll see that today. I think the board is code created, so you would trump me if we never have come to that position, obviously, but you'll see that. And I think what Lisa and I can provide too is a lot of insight into municipal workings. We've asked the requestor to be here today, but also someone from Real Estate Services, Robin Ward. She's the head of Real Estate Services of Heritage Land Bank, because what I think we'll find here is there's a question: is there a substantive conflict of interest or not? And so I think in the old days, first of all we had the older code, but also the board would decide if they wanted to take an opinion, and then the next month you would actually have people. I sort of look at them right away and say, okay, let's just get the people here and let's shortcut that process. Try to get as much information up front. It's not, however, like the zoning boards where the staff actually do a whole analysis and an opinion. We don't do that ahead of time. And then who writes the opinions just depends. Someone will volunteer, the person who's been the most vocal. If there's no one who has time to do it, then it'll usually default to Lisa or myself. But anybody can write an opinion. They generally tend to be about three pages long at max. They're not these long, elaborate things. And the code is much easier to use, but I'd be glad to at some point if the two of you'd like to come to like a little extra training session, just run you through it real quick. We really try to simplify things primarily. We can now read things.
And Dee did a tremendous amount of work spearheading the code rewrite, which we just went through last year. And I don't know if you're familiar with all of that, but this code was, we whittled it down from about 55, 60 pages down to about, 15? And so that has helped us a lot over the years with our opinions and what we get involved with. And there's been an evolution too. When I first joined this board, how long have you been on this board? 6, 7 years? 6 years.
This is your 7th.
So when I first joined this group, we used to spend the vast majority of our time on teacher gifts disclosures. That literally was at least half of all of our meetings, if not more. We have since shifted and been able to get rid of most of those. And now we're working more closely with the assembly, which I think is far more rewarding as a group. It's been a big shift. I was the chair for about 2.5 years, and then I've handed it back over to Terry. And I was just about to say something really obnoxious, but I'm not going to, about Terry not being here once I handed it over. But I'm not going. I will withhold the comment until he gets here, so I can say it to his face. But we have a lot of fun in this group, and we're welcome. Thanks for joining us. Yeah. Okay.
May I introduce myself?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. Please.
My name is Lisa Slusner, and I'm a deputy municipal clerk. Currently, I'm the acting clerk, so I will be administering your oath today, your oath of office. I staff the Board of Ethics, and so if you ever need anything, have any needs, concerns, whatever, contact me. I can get information or your concern to down the correct channel, however you want to go. We provide a binder of your agenda each month, and also your code book. You're welcome to take this with you. If you want a copy at home, I'll make you another one before the next meeting. And you're welcome to take anything out of your binder at any time as well, so if you need it. So if you're ready to, shall we
Can I
administer the
respond?
oath? Oh, sure.
I was just going to say, and you notice you have a powerhouse staff person, literally the deputy clerk.
Yeah.
You have deputy municipal attorney, that this board is really well respected, and that we really delve into a lot of issues that affect the assembly, and the assembly has their own subcommittee, and we'll report to them once in a while, but it's really a highly respected board. So it's very fun, and we deal with some pretty sophisticated issues sometimes. The way we got rid of, by the way, the teacher gift things is we changed our code. And we said, okay, these things are safe. If you fall within these, not only you don't have to disclose, and they're safe. Well, that eliminated 80% of them. Plus, it was more readable for the teachers. But that's the other thing, is to keep in mind things we might want to change in the code, because there's little gaps that I can see that probably we should add at some point. For instance, you and I'm not discussing the code at all, like what my relationship is to the board or anything. I thought, it probably ought to be in code. But anyway, so it's again a very well respected board, and the last 2 municipal attorneys were taken off this board. So
Okay, do this. Here's your oath.
That is true.
Here's
Yeah.
your oath.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way. That's true.
And if you wouldn't mind standing and raising your right hand, repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Jack Marshall,
Solemnly swear
solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Alaska,
the Constitution of the State of Alaska,
and the Charter of the Municipality of Anchorage,
and the Charter of the Municipality of Anchorage,
and that I will faithfully perform the duties
and that I will faithfully perform the duties
of the Board of Ethics
of the Board of Ethics
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
So if you sign those and hand those back to me, I will put the seal on them and get them filed. And also, I have a disclosure form. So with our new code, disclosure of your economic interest is required upon appointment and upon acquisition. And I just thought, since we got a new form, and should I just
We'll sign it too.
let's get the whole board current.
Yeah.
Although we no longer have to do this annually.
No annuals, but
And this is if you are a household member, have an interest in municipal business, contract with the city. So that's all it is. Not an APOC one, the one with the state, you disclose everything you owned in your entire
Right.
life. This is simply, do you or someone in your household have a business or contract with the city? Or are likely to, you
I forgot we rewrote this whole thing, and now I gotta read this.
because we have three, public servant can be an employee, a board member, or an elected official. So you're going to check board member, and then you're going to be upon appointment.
See, she's absolutely
Yeah.
not.
Thank
like,
you.
This board would not function without her. Mm-mm. And so, did you say I'm upon appointment?
Well, you're upon a reappointment, so yes,
Yeah,
yes.
reappointment.
And then you're going to, under of a municipal board or commission, you're going to put Board of Ethics.
Yeah.
And then if neither you nor any member of your immediate family or household have any personal or financial interest in a municipal contract or in an entity engaging in business with the municipality, you may check the first box, sign at the bottom, and you're done. Don't even look at the scary backside.
So what are you thinking?
I was thinking that my wife's an attorney. She has information that I don't think she has anything that's.
Yeah, I know Michelle. I think about Michelle too. And there's an occasional case that comes up, but I don't know of anything off the top of my head. So I just.
Well, and it would be more like we
Thank
retained
you.
one of them versus we are on the other
Right.
side. Not a conflict really.
There was one case that came up where I offered to work as conflict counsel on a municipal prosecution on a municipal criminal case, and I just disclosed that when it came out. And,
Okay, now if you'll turn to your tab that says training, you're going to go to the left, and it's a dark green tab. Inside there is an orientation packet.
Do we have that or we don't?
You do.
No.
Everybody
Oh, we
has
do
one.
have it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just updated everybody's
Okay,
training
training.
materials, and it's written down. And I know you all can read, but there's a few things that if we would just go over in just to highlight.
Yeah.
So
oh,
I'm going to go past the front page and then past the table of contents, and then of course you know that we have a mayor who is head of the administrative branch of our local government, and we have the Anchorage Assembly who is head of the legislative branch of our local government. The Anchorage Assembly consists of 11 members, 2 members for each district, except for Downtown District, which has 1 member. There's some contact information at the bottom for the clerk's office and the assembly members as well. Assembly committee that we work very closely with is the Assembly Ethics and Elections Committee. It's chaired by Pete Peterson. Occasionally when we have hot topics or we're working on something really interesting, we will update this committee by attending the meeting, and usually the chair or the vice chair will attend that meeting.
we went regularly when we were modifying or changing the code. We'd go to almost all those meetings.
Right.
They meet about once a month. Although I've noticed they've been canceling theirs recently.
With holidays.
Holidays,
So
okay.
they're back in action again because
Yeah.
of course elections is coming up, and so they're probably the busiest,
But now we're more of an ad hoc. I mean, whenever we're called to the meeting, people go over.
Yeah.
It's something that we want to talk to them about.
Exactly. Or when we do
But it was
something
nice
really great.
because when I first joined, we never, ever were involved with that kind of
Mhm.
stuff. And it's just been a real pleasure.
Well, you know, they got used to someone coming there, so when
Yeah.
we stopped going,
Right,
they were just like,
right.
are they not
Right,
coming?
I know.
What's happening?
Yeah.
You know, we're like, oh, we just don't have
Right.
anything right now. So, the Assembly Department has 5 boards and commissions. You're one of those boards and commissions, or you're one of those boards. The purpose of the Ethics Board is to set clear and reasonable standards for municipal public servants. And the Board of Ethics promotes an understanding of these standards. The Assembly Department also has the Board of Adjustment, the Board of Equalization, the Salaries and Emoluments Commission, and the Election Commission. The Municipal Board of Ethics was established by AMC 4.40050 Board of Ethics. We're also subject to the provisions of Chapter 4.05 Appointments, Meetings, and Procedures, and in particular in the Ethics Code 1.15140. The powers of the Board of Ethics are derived from its duties, which are 3-pronged. You have a duty to receive ethics complaints for potential violation, provide advisory opinions, and develop an ethics education program. Members, there's a few qualifications. Members may not hold other elected or political office, appointed public office with any government unit, hold political party office, publicly endorse, contribute to, or engage in any political or campaign activity on behalf of any candidate or elected municipal office, or be employed by any enterprise or authority owned by the municipality. You're here, so I assume that all of those are A-OK. I've given you some information to contact the other members, emails, and some of these phone numbers we don't give to the public, so that's between you members. There are attendance requirements that are established by 4.05060. We meet regularly and as needed for special matters and work sessions. There are some requirements that within any 12-month period, a member must not have more than 3 unexcused absences, more than 6 unexcused or excused absences, or unexcused and excused absences exceeding 1/3 of the total number of regular meetings. So under your attendance tab, I will always have your updated attendance for every meeting. So I include a percentage category so you can always track where you're at, you know, in terms of not meeting these requirements, because it's sort of odd in the code. If you don't meet any of these 3 requirements, you just are off the board. There's like no decision made. There's no like process. You're off. So we try not to have that happen, you know, for any reason.
If you want to quit,
If you just don't show up, we'll take you right out of there.
That's ghosting on the board.
Sorry. So prior to any regular meeting, if you can't attend, if you'll just send me an email or give me a call, I'll make sure that the chair knows and we'll excuse you for that meeting. Okay? So there's a little section on political activity and conflict of interest, which is just simply the code. And I was going to ask Dee if you had anything to say about those 2 subjects, or should
About
we
which
just let
ones?
them read them? Political activity and conflict of interest.
Actually, the board is a very good way that you don't have to get involved in campaigning and all sorts of other things. And it's just at the municipal level, but so you could be involved state stuff, but it's very helpful. We don't have to do that.
Okay, well, so we'll skip those 2 parts because you can read that information. We'll go on to parliamentary procedures and Robert's Rules of Order, which we are governed by. We are considered a small board, and so we have small board rules. The next page, I've just highlighted 4 of them. Like David said, we are a super informal board, so most of these rules we never even come up against. But the chair may participate in debate on this board. Informal discussion without a motion is allowed. A second is not required to make a motion, and members must seek recognition from the chair. Other than that, the rest of these things, we just sort of like, that's our groove anyway. So on the next page is just a list of common motions that you might want to be familiar with. We're not really, formal about making those specific motions anyway. So we do have a website, and on the website there is guidance for filling out forms. All of our forms are there. All of our advisory opinions are there. Back to 2007, all of our ethics complaints, reports, or responses are there back to 2007. There's a current list of members and your appointment documents, and our annual report resides on that page as well.
Okay, but although it's interesting because our opinions are under the old code. So-
Right, you have no new opinions under the, we don't,
I'm
do
not
we?
sure we do. Yeah.
Well, I mean, no, we don't. No. Wait, yes, we have one. Yes, we do. You're right. You're right. Yes, we do. Okay.
Did you write it?
I think I did.
Yeah. you did it.
We have one, and we have one ethics complaint as well. So, okay. We do. We are under the Alaska Open Meetings Act. So accordingly, all of our meetings are public, and except that if we go into executive or deliberative session. In our case, a meeting means a gathering of a majority of the members. So majority would be 3 in our case. All meetings include serial meetings. So when you get an email from me, or be careful just to respond back to me so that we don't create a chain or a phone conversation or chain email string, that constitutes a meeting. So, okay.
So you're not emailing back to all the members and debating things?
Right. All of our recordings go on the municipal website, and there's instructions to get to those if you ever need to listen to them. And the back page for the new members is an information sheet. If you could just tear that off and at some time during this meeting, fill it out and hand it to me at the end, that would be great. And other than that, that is a Reader's Digest version of a orientation.
Perfect. Thank you, Lisa. And apologies again for.
No?
So, do we have?
We have
Would you
one.
want to start talking about that before the consent agenda?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Although the requestor is not yet here, where would that stuff be in here, Lisa?
For that
Was
is
his, and then my little response, right? His.
yes, his is 6 D. 6D.
And Chair, if I could interrupt
Yes,
you 1
please.
second?
Yeah,
Robin Ward is here for
Okay.
everybody. She's the head of real estate services and Heritage Land Bank. And this requester has to do with being on commissions, happen to be out of Girdwood, but her office deals with the overlap and sort of land use. It probably would serve us well while we're waiting for Mr. is it Edgington? Yes, Edgington, to read what he put his statement of facts and then my brief response.
Sure.
And by the way, my brief response is usually in response to a telephone call, so it's, you'll see. But then we can go over that
Sure.
because we
and
need to
you
flush
can-
this out.
And you can give us a little introduction too.
Okay, to boards and commissions and this and that. So are you going to, can I have the board read?
Yeah. Let's
So-
read this first, and then.
His thing, my quick response. It's 6A. No, 6D, I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Part of the fun of this group is we send John Wild Goose Chase. Maybe it would be helpful, just say a quick thing. There's elected officials, there's 3 main groupings on the ethics code: elected officials, boards and commissions, and employees. And there are some differences between the two. But in general, there's sort of an idea that elected officials like for the assembly, don't serve on our boards and commissions. The boards and commissions are your citizens, and we keep those sort of separate. We have sort of recognized in the code that there's two types of service areas, and Robin, jump in anytime you want. The service, and I'm trying to wait a little bit for Mike, he doesn't have to be here, but it'd be respectful if we waited. There are limited road service areas, which sort of are maintenance of the roads and hiring contractors. And then there are your larger service areas, your general area service areas, police, fire, more. The Girdwood Board of Supervisors is not a limited service area. It has 4 or 5 enunciated powers, cemetery, police, a couple other things. Parks and Rec. And so here's an individual that says, I want to serve on GBOS, the Girdwood Board of Supervisors, which is an elected body, but I also want to serve on this commission that is also very active down there. What's the name of the commission down there? Oh, just your Heritage.
The Heritage Land Bank Advisory Commission, but we are the largest landowner there. We control about 5,000 acres, and there's only about 300 acres of private park.
Yeah.
So I get a request probably from Real Estate Services or saying, Dee, what do you think? So this is actually was an email. Said, well, this is my initial thoughts, that I think he is an elected official, like from, and that elected officials don't serve on a board and commissions, but also these two groups have overlap votes. And so he says, well, wait a minute, the Girdwood Board of Supervisors is more like a limited road service area. They're really not the assembly, but it's obvious assembly shouldn't serve on boards and commissions, but really is there an issue here? And so that's why it's coming back here, because is there a real conflict of interest? The code before this divided the 3 groups, elected officials, employees, and boards and commissions, the 3 groups, and you didn't cross lines. We, again, recognize that the limited boards and commissions should be treated, or limited board people should be treated more like the boards and commissions, because they really weren't. Mike, come on in.
Hello. Hi.
No.
Hi,
We're
come
just-
on in. We're just
Where do you like to
introducing you.
sit?
Anywhere you want.
I'll sit next door.
We're pretty informed.
Don't have to swear in.
Mike, what we've given to people here is your advisory opinion, okay? And just explaining the issue is between the participation on GBOS and a board or commission at the same time, and whether there are real conflicts of interest. Even though structurally there's an overlap, is that a problem for the Board of Ethics? Because as Mike points out, certainly GBOS is different than the assembly sitting on a board or commission. And I don't know whether Robin can add, I think we don't know what GBOS, none of us do, what GBOS does versus your commission.
Okay, our commission is advisory to the assembly. When we have issues, either disposals, really almost anything, our commission hears it at the same time that we take it to what's called the Land Use Committee, which is one of the committees of GBOS. So we normally run things through the commission, through land use, which then goes to the Board of Supervisors, because it's like going to a community council, only bigger. So-
Robin, can I suggest, can we erase that and you draw this out, the little lines to
Oh,
each group?
I want to see this as well.
Thanks, Mike.
Mike's taller, maybe we should make
Yeah,
him do it.
Oh, no, you haven't seen my drawing.
But you see, maybe, Robin, because you've mentioned like 4 or 5 entities just there in 2 seconds.
How are you
Yes.
elected to the GBOS? Is it like a public vote?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, let's give you a little more, maybe a little more information on GBOS.
David, I think you
GBOS
want-
is
My-
elected
oh, sorry.
by the citizens or the residents of
Of the service-
Girdwood,
of the
of the
service
service area,
area.
which is Girdwood. So they're the only ones who elected their board, and is there 5?
There are 5 members.
There are 5 members. Each one of those 5 members also takes a committee. So one is land use, one is roads, one is public safety, one is
We have public
parks.
safety, we have parks and cemetery.
So each one of those takes a special area, has that commission or committee, and then deals with those issues. Because we normally come under land use. Most of our issues when we do, it's either a disposal, it's our work plan, whatever we do as far as Heritage Land Bank projects and so on, we take those to the Land Use Committee at the same time, or fairly close to the time that we take it to the advisory commission. All of our projects have to go through the advisory commission, and then a resolution is, if it goes on to the assembly, then their resolution goes on to the assembly. Basically the same thing that GBOS does. That goes to the land use committee, then it goes on to GBOS, and a resolution from GBOS goes on to the assembly.
Robin, if you wouldn't mind drawing just little squares, GBOS versus their land use committee versus Heritage Land,
Mhm.
and then maybe we can follow a resolution or
You
something
bet.
through the process.
Okay, so this is GBOS,
Which is an elected body.
which is an elected body, and one of their committees is what's called LUC, which is our land use
Can I?
committee. And yes,
Yeah, I was going to say, that it's a weird place, as you probably know anyway, but land use is both,
It's very weird.
land use is both a subcommittee and a peer committee in some senses. So we don't have a traditional community council. Land use acts as a community council in the sense that anyone at the meeting, members of the public, as long as they're residents or they have a business there, can vote on resolutions and decisions. So
at this level.
yeah, well, yes, but land use is parallel in the sense of if it's purely a question about taxes, where we have sole responsibility as supervisors, the decision is GBOS. Things like land use typically are really going through the community council part. So there's a vote at LUC. GBOS almost always just ratifies that. There is a procedure if GBOS disagrees with the land use committee. It basically goes back to the committees as another round. And then typically you end up with either an agreement or the two bodies both submit their comments or their resolutions in parallel. So although it's a subcommittee, it's also parallel to some extent.
And is the subcommittee, is that in code anywhere, or is that just
No,
how
that's
things
purely
have
within
developed
our-
over
that's
time?
purely
Okay.
within our operating procedures.
Okay.
This is our HLBAC, which is our advisory commission.
Heritage Land Bank.
Advisory to the assembly.
So Heritage Land Bank Advisory
Assembly is
Commission.
up here. That's the Anchorage Assembly. So this is, say, we have a parcel. I'm gonna use 6040.
Oh,
We
yes,
have a
yes.
parcel, 6040, which is a 43-acre parcel, and we want to consider, and we are, looking at what can we do with that. It is zone residential. We're thinking about, and we're not, but I'm going to use this very hypothetically, we're going to propose to dispose of that. And we have our own procedure and so on. So about the same time that we would take it to the, this is a staff recommendation, and it's in our one-year plan, we want to dispose it. So we take it to our commission for a resolution asking approval to dispose of this property with a sealed competitive
Can I
bid.
interrupt you? The down level, the very bottom, when they say "we," that's Heritage Land Bank.
This is
That's
Heritage Land
a
Bank staff.
department of
This is our-
the
they
city.
want to dispose of it, and
And
they go
so,
to the
yeah, so
advisory
they have to
committee.
go through their commission because they have disposal procedures, so they,
And that is in code.
and that, yeah, that's all in code, and the commission is just what this board is. It's a bunch of people who volunteered,
That's
who,
right.
and, but the staff, the HLB, have to have their concurrence to do things. So they're very critical, and they're all volunteer citizen types. They can't be employees. That's a little bit of an
One
argument,
more thing
but
about them is that we have a 7-member board. One has to be from Girdwood, one has to be from Eagle River. They
Okay.
also represent areas of expertise. We try and have, you can't have too many in the real estate industry, development industry, that's actually in code. So we try and have people with expertise, background in what we do, but we can only have a few, and then the rest are members at large. just
that's the
general public.
commission, not
This
HLB.
is
So
our-
if you circle
this is
that,
the makeup of our
yeah,
commission.
circle that and then draw an arrow up
Yeah.
to your
This is the
commission.
makeup of our commission.
By code, the commission has to be certain people.
Right. So we have this issue, so about the same time that we do this, we would normally go to a community council, so that's what we do here. We're gonna take this issue to the community council. We may take it to LUC first, just to see what happens, before we even take it to the commission. Now remember, when we go to LUC, at least one of these people, this is our Goodwood person, probably is going to be at that meeting, hearing about it and so on. We have staff there also, and we present it to them on their agenda. Then it would go on to GBOS, because resolutions from both of these to the assembly is our goal. Does that make sense?
Uh,
You're from Eagle River. You should get this. So,
Why? I don't understand. They both go to, rather than going back to Heritage Land Bank. So, I was always under the impression that that's one went back to the Heritage Land Bank and then it's just one.
it's probably both. I would say, you know, the Heritage Land Bank, if we get here first, they're gonna have a copy of the resolution.
Right.
We'll give them at least a briefing if it's only been this one.
Right.
But the resolutions would both be attached to any
But
assembly
after it comes
approval.
through the Heritage Land Bank.
This is the main one.
Right, right.
This is by code. This is really by community policy.
Right.
This is not in code that we have to have resolutions from them, but by policy, we go to our community councils.
That resolution would go to the Heritage Land Bank and then forwarded, if necessary, to the Assembly.
It depends. I think that GBOS, correct me if I'm wrong, may decide to do it to both, and their
Yeah, we typically
resolution
do it.
would, to both.
But there's no,
This is not required by code.
that's what I mean, so.
This
I
is
mean,
just open and
yes,
transparent,
yes.
being out in the community councils.
Put it in question.
We do not do that.
No.
Yes.
Yes, yeah, but I don't ever remember getting, you know, we got a lot of stuff in Heritage Land Bank when I was on it, but never from, I don't remember getting it.
We have a really good staff who work for.
They
who work
do
in
have very
Curtis
good
area,
staff
so,
now,
yeah,
and
so
frankly, their
They
staff.
send it everywhere.
Yeah, they do send it to
They make us
everyone.
look good.
So I think that may be recent and with the current staff that they have.
But regardless, there is some kind of vote or resolution that's drafted by GBOS that then either goes to Heritage and or the
And-
Assembly.
So again, I'm going to harp on the distinction and similarity between LUC and GBOS. In the case of a land use issue, LUC is the primary committee and GBOS ratifies. Under extreme and rare circumstances, GBOS may disagree, in which case you actually get a resolution from both here and here, sure. So typically what happens is LUC will draft something and suggest the GBOS passes it, and then GBOS passes it. Occasionally there's some language changes.
But something does come from GBOS that goes directly to the Assembly.
Yes, yes. There's a signature for the
Gotcha.
typically to the Assembly, and then maybe from LUC. But I think the point you made earlier is very, very common. It has been for the time I've been involved. That the advisory commission member for Girdwood also votes in LUC.
Sure.
Right.
So they're a voting member of the LUC.
Because anyone, frankly, who is a resident
Anyone
or
who's
even
resident or
has a business,
yes.
I mean,
Or
kind
owns
of any-
property.
Yeah.
They could be second homes.
So if an issue, your disposal issue, I'm sorry, I'm not
Okay.
as quick on the update as I should be, but so your issue will go, you might go to your advisory.
I have to go to
You
my
have to.
advisory, that's in code.
And you have to.
This is a given, this is code.
That happens, okay. And then, does it then go, does it simultaneously
It
go to
depends,
LUC?
we look at everybody's schedules.
Okay.
You know, preferably, we want a resolution of support from
Right.
LUC and GBOS, so
Did-
we will look at their schedules and try and accommodate all of these around the same time.
Does the advisory commission then give you a recommendation?
Correct.
And it
They-
comes back to?
Not to us, this goes on to, their
It goes
advisory
on
to
to-
the assembly, so their
Okay.
resolution is to the assembly,
They don't go to LUC, they go right up to the assembly?
straight to the assembly.
Okay, so you might send this issue to both HLBAC and to LUC, and in which case LUC would go to GBOS, which would go to the assembly?
Or back to us, both.
Okay, okay.
And Robin?
It's why when Mike was comparing the LUC to community council, because they don't have a girdled community council, it's just sort of like in Anchorage, sometimes the community council's input is required before it can go up to the assembly, like in marijuana security or something. Other times it's not. So I'm thinking maybe that's a distinction in this case or not. Are there times that well, there's not, because LUC isn't in the code. There's no time where their opinion has to be respected by HLBAC before it goes to the assembly. And if they don't agree with you, they can give a little memo to the.
This is a small community, and we try and work very hard, you know, with the community to make sure that what we do down there is a benefit not only to all of the citizens, but especially to the.
Because
the
generally, you
citizens.
wouldn't bring something to the assembly that the GBOS opposed heavily.
That would
Should I
not
qualify
be a
that?
good idea.
Yeah.
No.
Right.
Small community with a loud community.
A very loud and active and very engaged community, so we don't normally do that. You're
I
absolutely.
wasn't passing a judgment.
Okay, what Mike is planning on being, he's a member of this board right there. Right?
He's asking to be a member of both of these.
Okay, he is a member of this board now.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, and he wants to apply for this board.
Correct.
And I personally, if he was to get on the Heritage Land Bank board, all he would have to do is to excuse himself from anything that can be voted on from good, so there would not be two votes there. So since this goes to the assembly, and so does this, okay, if he votes here, it goes there. He just has to excuse himself from that, so that there isn't two.
So my question then is, as I said, this body may pass resolutions directly to the Assembly or get ratified here. What about votes there? Because historically, we've always had members on HLB and.
Yeah, but that
votes
still
this.
goes through the other.
Right. But so if it didn't go through, if they were generating a parallel resolution in opposing the GBOS, then you'd see a conflict if a member voted at that.
The only thing, we would want to make sure that you didn't have two votes
Right.
going to the assembly.
And not everything that goes through GBOS is heritage.
Right,
land.
right, right.
Most of the things aren't.
Right, right.
Because technically the responsibilities of GBOS are well, they're limited in our supervisory capacity, they're limited to taxation issues. So it's limited to our 5 areas of responsibility, which are cemetery, roads, parks and rec, fire and police. Everything else that goes through GBOS is because it acts as a de facto or ex officio community council for the purposes of signing the last piece of paper.
So, and most of the stuff from the Heritage Land Bank doesn't come from Goodrich, so, yeah.
A lot of it does, though. The
Yeah.
majority of our land
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
land bank
Yeah.
is in Girdwood.
Yeah.
But not all of our projects is in Girdwood.
Right.
Many of our projects are in Eagle River or in Eagle.
Well, and the interesting thing here is that our code puts a Girdwood person on HLBAC, so that vote's already there. So how does them also being part of GBOS really affect that? I mean, so the LUC people do the land use people do most of the land use for GBOS, right? So
Yes.
does that really affect things? Because we've already
That's
recognized
why
in
we're
code
here.
that we want a
Yeah.
Girdwood person.
It was an easy question.
Which is true, but he could excuse himself from the GBO and go through, go at the Heritage Land Bank, but you just can't go both ways.
Right, that's it.
Would GBOS be voting very often on land use issues?
As you said, it's mostly ratifying.
Yeah, it's really ratifying the
Probably
LUC
as much,
decision.
I mean, they do vote on it, it's
Yeah,
on
but
their
it's
agenda,
ratifying.
but it's ratifying recommendations from LUC, yes. So
Or-
any issue that we've taken, frankly, to LUC is gonna most likely end up on the GBOS
Yes, but it's more or less a
agenda.
pass-through unless it's so contentious that there's a difference between the two bodies. So obviously the LUC is anybody who turns up can vote, which sometimes means you get a vote just on one particular interest group. I think the best example in the last couple of years was we had an application for a conditional use permit for a brewery, and we probably had like 60 community members turn up. Typically land use has maybe a dozen tops. We had 60 community members turn up to vote for the brewery. There was no conflict. GBOS was very happy with the brewery as well, so there's no conflict there. You can imagine a situation where, if, for example, the resort wanted to do something, which the town in general didn't agree, but all their employees came for an LUC meeting, you can see a case where there may be a difference in opinion between the two bodies in those circumstances. I said, in which case our current operating procedures says we go through, if it's time critical, we send both opinions directly to the assembly. If it's not time critical, we basically have another bite at the cherry and it goes through both committees again. said, in general, I think over everything I've seen in the last year, pretty much.
I can't think of anything.
GBOS is basically ratifies the decisions from the subcommittees where the expertise is, or where at least the public input is.
Does this pretty much cover, did you want to add anything to your
Well,
application?
I have
do you wanna
my
s-
more general question, this is the specific case that prompted it, but I think my more general question is, the advisory opinion was really, if you're an elected member, you can't serve on any board. And I wanted to understand whether, I couldn't find anything written down to that effect, and I wanted to understand what the boundary cases were for that, whether that's a complete prohibition, or whether it was, I think because there are now exceptions in the later ethics code, there are exceptions for limited road service areas, for example. GBOS is only advisory. There's a small number of elected positions which are neither school district nor assembly, but aren't limited road either, where we have a little bit more power, but not much. But really, we're still only advisory. Nothing we don't have any power.
I don't even, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think there's Chudiak Fire Department board as well. So there's probably less than half a dozen, I would imagine, that are in that intermediate space. So I wanted to understand whether the sort of ethical and sort of code issues that apply to elected officials apply to everybody for every elected case except for local and road service areas, or whether the intention was really to apply to those with actual power, which would be assembly and school district. So I just wanted to understand what the boundaries were and what the flow was.
Mike, and I don't think we've ever gotten that far with the new rewrite, all we knew is that we knew that the limited board should not be treated the same as elected officials, because
Right.
number one, half of them are appointed anyway, but number two,
Well,
they just
yeah.
have such limited powers. It's not fair. For instance, there's a lot of, with the assembly, there's a lot of additional disclosure and other conflict of interest considerations. They have a whole different set of rules, and it was clear that those were not good, were not well taken with the limited
Yeah.
board. I don't think we've tried to pair off which of the other elected officials should be somewhere between assembly and so this question may not be so much structural. Yeah, it may not be so much structural. I mean, the structural is a concern, but then the real issue is probably, are there real conflicts of interest here? And I guess, besides Mike's also, do you, as the administration professional that works in this area, what are your concerns with allowing this type of, or allowing a GBOS person to also be on the commission?
I really don't think I have an issue with it, because so much of it is frankly advisory. The commission the assembly makes our final choices, and it's very clear in code that they do. I guess I'm more concerned about perception than I am whether or not there's a true conflict. And I think I tend to agree a little bit with Ted that these two votes are the ones that I would see the public might have a perception that there is a conflict. But I agree, we'll use Mike as an example. If Mike were to recuse himself on a specific issue that is also, on an HLB commission agenda, I think the public would say, okay, that's appropriate. So I guess it's more of a perception issue to me than it is a real technical conflict.
Do either one of you have anything to add to this? Because we want to make sure that we let you go as soon as we can so we can start debating this without spending any more of your time. But is there anything else you'd like to add to your application or your request?
Only that again, if there was a way of addressing slightly more general issues, I would be.
Okay.
That's kind of the question I'm most interested in, not so much the specifics. I don't know there's another vacancy for another.
Today,
3
there's
years.
not another
Yeah, there probably won't be
vacancy,
for
so there
several
won't,
years.
I don't think we'll have
It's not a
vacancy for
practical
another year,
consideration
but
today.
yeah.
But I think
Oh, so you cannot
a
apply.
sense of, no, I can't at the moment, I wasn't
Oh.
selected because
Oh.
of this issue, I assume. And there were other great candidates.
I was gonna say, there are great candidates, and that all happens in the mayor's office, and I stay away from the mayor's office
Gotcha.
except when he calls me in.
All right, so this specific issue isn't before us.
Well, I think this
Unless
is
it's
probably
3 years.
It will be
It was
on
It
top
may well be,
again.
yes. It
yeah.
wasn't the
Okay.
time, and it may
It
well
was
be
at
in the
the time.
future.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think this is a good example of
Okay.
this is a good example of a specific case where there could be conflict, or there could be potential perceived conflict. So it's
Okay.
probably a good example to understand, from my point of view, to have a better sense of where the general guidelines are.
Okay. No? Okay. Good. Anybody else here have any questions?
Any other questions?
No? Okay. Thank you both
Thank
very
you.
much for coming.
Thanks for driving in. I like it when you come in, when I know I always have to go out.
I know, I feel guilty every time you go through it. Thank you
All
very
right,
much.
thank you.
Okay, first of all, are we gonna go to deliberative session?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's go to deliberative.
That's just the second level, it's not secret.
So I move to go into deliberative. Any objection? Hearing no objection, go to deliberative.